Hey everyone, I'm Instructor Brooks, and in today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about board passing rates, but how these affect instructors and program directors. So in episode 1, I told listeners we're talking about the implications of board pass rates for students, and I was talking about that in 2018, the passing rate on the boards for first-time graduates was 83%. Already not the percent I want. It should be in the 90s, in my opinion. But anyway, so then I said it dropped into the 70s during the height of COVID, especially with, and we'll get into that. But then in 2023, the most recent data that we have, because that's the last year that's finished at the time of this recording, it's back up to 80% at least in 2023. So a little better than the 70s, but still overall, compared to 5 years ago, if it was 2018, we have a 5 years where the scores are not better. They're not even staying stagnant. They're literally worse. So we're going to dive into the implications of this for the instructors and program directors. So I was mentioning COVID. So there are a lot of people who are going to tell you that COVID played a huge role in the declining pass rates. And I agree, COVID did not help. In fact, I think COVID showed some of our embedded flaws across our entire education system. Now, I'm just focusing on physical therapist assistant education, but I really feel that this could apply to any aspect of academia. We have all this technology, yet we failed. All across the board, everyone is doing worse. Worse reading rates, worse math rates, worse passing rates on the boards for PTAs, okay? And a lot of people will say, well, because COVID had forced people to go online for a lot of class information and class stuff, and I also agree. But that's where our weakness is. So a lot of instructors went online to teach their classes. And I bet you saw or heard this, teachers reading PowerPoints synchronously to students or teachers recording themselves reading PowerPoints. And that was the lecture. So if you've listened to any of my stuff about teaching, you'll know that I am anti-lecture as a tool to teach a class. That doesn't mean you don't talk to people, but a class that's called a lecture class where the teacher is constantly just talking to the students, that is the most ineffective way across the entire spectrum of teaching. And that is academic science from Yale to any other college of education you want to look at. Lecturing is the worst method. So we went with the worst method and took it to a place people were already not good at online. Why do you think we had such bad results? There you go. Now, for all intensive purposes, COVID for most of the world and this country, nobody thinks about it. It's over. So we're all back to normal and all that kind of stuff. Great. That's awesome. But I was talking to somebody who runs a program and who I'm friends with, and she was telling me she works for CAPTI, and she helped when people programs submit, changes to their curriculum and all this stuff. She's a part of that. And she said that the last time, this was in April, at the time, April of 2024. So who knows when you're listening to this now, but at that time, I think she said 80% of applications that she was looking at that was coming through was for programs to transition into a hybrid or blended type model. Now, I'm not going to get into the details about what true hybrid and blended are. I don't care. Basically, the premise is these programs want to be able to have students do stuff online, come to school, and only do lab. And I'm a fan of that because I think that's great. For a lot of the reasons I think these programs want to do it, which is one, it frees up students to have more time to study when it's convenient for them so they can have jobs, take care of their life, and it offers some flexibility, which is a nice thing to offer as a program when you're competing against other programs. And then you can just focus on lab stuff when you're in the classroom. But this doesn't solve one of our problems, which is we're not good at teaching or learning online with the current things that we do. And a lot of these programs that are switching into this are finding out that they're spending their lab time on ground going over old material that the students should have been prepared for. So we're running into the same problems. Students aren't prepared. They don't know the information we need them to know. They haven't practiced. They don't like the way it's distributed. All types of all excuses for why things are not happening correctly. So we can fix those. That is what's awesome. So how do we fix this? Well, we need to implement best practices. The things that I have on the Instructor Brooks campus or that I use in my classroom with my students, these are things that, I've made up, but like for myself specifically, like the lesson, but all of these things come from different college of education and education scientists explaining this is how humans learn. All the research shows. So just like when I was a practicing clinician, I would follow the evidence. As a teacher, I followed the evidence and swallowed any pride I had and said, hey, I'm going to do what the experts say are the best ways to teach so students can learn. And that's what we need to think about, is incorporating best practice into, whether it's an always on ground or a hybrid classroom, whatever it is, we need to implement best practices. Otherwise, how can we call ourselves a professional if we're not following the best practices? So now I'll pay off on the tease where I was like, hey, I'm going to talk about the implications of pass rates for instructors and program directors. So what does this mean? Well, on the surface, having these poor pass rates means that instructors and program directors are stressed out because they're worried about going on probation or getting dinged by CAPTE and eventually losing accreditation and thus losing jobs, right? So that sucks. And I believe that going blended or hybrid is going to be a recipe to increase that stress if people are not implementing the best practices that I have been implementing myself in my classroom. And this is why I have spent, and I am not exaggerating, nearly every waking day, at least some part of every day since April of 2020, working on implementing best practices, creating lessons, building a classroom, testing my classroom out on my students, implementing all these strategies, observing what's happening, and modifying all these things to fit into my Instructor Brooks campus for physical therapy assistant students. Been doing that for, at the time of filming of this, 4 years. For 4 years, following the evidence and building this almost every single day. And what I've essentially done, and I did not coin this term, so thank you, Amy, for coining this term, if you're listening. I've created a PTA program in a box. The Instructor Brooks campus is all the best practices put into a box with the information and lessons that you need to be successful right on my campus for you to have. Okay, so PTA in a box. I have worked with not just my own class, but I have worked with other programs who have been on probation. We're almost going to be lose their accreditation with CAPTE. And I've helped them come out of that pit, improve student performance in the classroom, on the boards, in the clinic, and save programs from losing accreditation. So, what's the implication for instructors and program directors? Of course, losing accreditation in the short term is going to suck and hurt you. But you know what else sucks? When these programs get shut down, this ruins an opportunity for other students who might eventually, who in the future would have become students or work towards becoming a physical therapist assistant, because now the school doesn't have a program. And now people might be saying, well, there's lots of programs, and there are lots of programs, but some of the programs have a wait list. Other programs, depending on what state you go to, let's say you go to Kansas or North Dakota, how many programs do you think exist there? Now, you could say, well, students could move. Of course, there are things that could be done, but we're making it harder for students to get the education they might want to get in the field they want to get. So it'll have a long-term ramification for our future clinicians and what we're able to produce. So as a program director and instructor, it hurts you in the short term by maybe losing accreditation, but it hurts the program, it hurts the profession even further down the road by having less opportunity for students to be able to become PTAs. So, and I believe my PTA in a box method and all of my stuff actually makes better clinicians because they're better students, and thus from that build up to being better clinicians and thus helping the profession. So what is my mission? My mission is really simple. It is to coach instructors and program directors, whoever the teachers are, to coach them in the ways of the science-backed teaching methods that even the APTA has encouraged programs to move to. This approach, the approach that I have with coaching and then implementing my campus and my lessons and my activities, will save instructors time and energy. It'll also save program directors time and energy for retraining training new hires, because there will be a better continuity of learning, or if there's a sub. So you won't have to, I mean, if you are a PTA instructor, and maybe you're still doing it, or maybe you're just starting, but how much are you studying to barely keep up in front of the students? You're studying a lot, right? You're spending 55 hours at a Starbucks every week trying to catch up on neuro and be like, oh my God, there's so much information. And somehow expecting students to know it faster than you when you're already smarter than they are about it. Kind of silly. So I'll save you that time because I already have it down for you. So I can help you a ton, and then you can do the things that you want to do, which are evaluate and assess students in lab type skills. So my mission is to help train people in this method that has changed and transformed my career as a teacher, going from stressed, overwhelmed, dreading work, and just feeling hopeless to now I'm walking around, drinking coffee, watching students make videos, do cool things, having a great time, and we're learning, having fun, and their test scores are showing insane progress, and their board practice scores, all types of stuff. Everything's better. Everything is better. And it helps reduce burnout and improve student engagement and success. So burnout for the instructors and for the students, which I think is, we talk about burnout, but we don't treat it with the gravitas we should as really the killer of, the profession academically and out in the field. That's a story for another day, but my method will at least reduce burnout in the classroom for the instructors and for the students. So as I close out this episode, I ask anyone that's listening to take a chance and step out of their comfort zone of lecturing or just doing what has always been done before, the appeal to tradition fallacy. Get out of their comfort zone and get off the path that continues to lead to disappointment, overwork, and burnout. And join me and others that I've been working with and blaze the path forward to a new way to teach PTA education, where everyone from students to instructors to program directors and eventually clinicians are all better off because we decided to follow the evidence. You'd follow the evidence for your patients, hopefully. You'll follow the evidence for your students. And you will have more fun. So you'll be more successful. You'll have more fun. To do this, you go to instructorbrooks.com. You set up a meeting and talk to me, and I can talk to you. You just got to set up the meeting, or go ahead and dive into the coaching. Click on coaching and get started on my first step, which is the basic kind of asynchronous working through some stuff to get you started on how your transformation needs to happen. And then we can start that transformation. So go to instructorbrooks.com, start the transformation, and let's crush teaching these students and have much better success. So I want to thank you for listening. Remember to be kind, pay it forward, and I'll catch you next time.